Welcome to Bree Bear's Books. Thank you so much for joining me, and thanks to those returning from chapter 1. This chapter, I'm going to do a small dive into each book I read in January and then do a prediction of my February reads. It might change, it probably will change, based off of just what I've already thought about and then seen, whether it's somebody suggested it or just in general on my bookshelf. Last month, in the month of January, as I said, I read about 8.5. I rounded up to 9, but I think I'm actually like 8.5 books in January. The first series I read was the Twisted series, the first one being Twisted Love. I read all of that within a day or two span. Actually, I think it was all within a 24-hour span. I read it the second day of January, and then by the third day I was completely done with it. That follows the story of a girl named Ava and her 4 friends. Ava's brother Josh is getting ready to leave the country, and he asks his best friend Alex to watch over his little sister while he's out of the country. And then Alex and Ava end up falling for each other, and it follows their love story as it grows and connects and stuff like that. I won't go too much in detail because I don't want to spoil anything. The second book is one of Ava's friends. So Bridget, she's actually a real life princess. She's actually getting ready to be crowned queen of a country. And she ends up falling for her bodyguard, Reese. Or at least I call him Reese. I don't know if that's how you actually say his name, but that's what I went with throughout the whole book and what I will live by. It follows their stories. You still hear a little bit about Alex and Ava and their story and what's going on with them, but it primarily focuses on Bridget and Reese and their love story and how they grew to be, and if they get to stay together because she's going to be queen and he has no title to be able to actually be married or with a queen to be. The third book was Twisted Hate. It follows another one of the 4 girlfriends, Jules. And then it actually circles back to Ava's brother, Josh. At first, they were hating each other throughout the whole, I believe it said 7 years that they knew each other. And then they slowly, throughout the book, start falling for each other and end up becoming inseparable, sorry. And then Twisted Lies, this is the one I'm counting as like a half read. It follows the 4th and final friend in the girl group named Stella. She's a social media influencer, and she ends up falling for the landlord of her building named Christian. And it tells their story. They've all been really quick reads for me, except for this last book, but that's just because I had to finish my January Book of the Month challenge with my mother-in-law, so I put that on pause, and then I ended up picking up another book by my favorite author, Natasha Preston. So the next set of books I read was The Shadow Children, which is my Book of the Month series that my mother-in-law gave me. The first one is Among the Hidden. It's about a boy named Luke. He is an illegal 3rd child. So he is in a country where they can only have a maximum of 2 kids per family. Anything over that, they have to either terminate the pregnancy or they have to hide the children. If they get found by the population police arrest the parents, and then ultimately, I'm going to say, unalives the 3rd child, which is horrible. He had to grow up in hiding, and he had 2 older brothers. Let's see. In that book, he finds another 3rd child one day when he's looking through like his attic vent out by a new neighborhood that was built behind their house, and he sees a face in one of the windows while everybody has already left, and he knows that the 2 children that he's always seen go in and out of that house has left. So one day he works up the courage to go over to that house, and he meets a girl named Jen, and she is one of the third children, and she is planning on getting a bunch of third children together and doing a rally against the government. And ultimately in the book, Luke has to decide if he wants to join Jen's rally or stay hidden with his family. So that was really interesting. It was a really quick read for me as well. It kept me intrigued the entire time, and I'm gonna be honest with you, I personally did not like the ending. I wanted it to end a little bit differently, but it was still a good book overall. The second one in that series that I read was Among the Imposters. It was still following Luke, where he was sent to the Hendrix School for Boys. He took on a new identity as Lee Grant, and he has to learn to live in a world with new people without his family as his own person. And he has to keep his secret to basically stay alive. Like, nobody can know that he's a third child, or he'll get reported to the population police, and then they'll come and unalive him. The third book, Among the Betrayed, this one follows a third child female named Edie, who is located in an all-girls school, which is on the other side of like a wooded area, from the Hendrix School for Boys that we read about in Among the Imposters. She found other third children's when she was exploring the woods one day, after sneaking out, and they were illegal third children, all from the Hendrix School for Boys, that would go and meet in secret and reveal their real identities and talk to each other. Edie takes on her new identity as Nina in the all-girls school, but she is quickly betrayed by her boyfriend, who was sneaking to the meetings, or actually I think he was hosting. If I remember correctly, he was hosting the meetings for the third children. So he ends up betraying her and giving her identity away, and she ends up being arrested by the population police. So it kind of follows her story a little bit more than Luke's that we were reading about in the first two books. And then in the fourth book, Among the Barrens, these are the 4 out of, I believe, 7 that I had in total that we've had. I believe when I looked it up that there was a total of 7 books that have been released, but I only had the first 4 books. So the fourth one, Among the Barrens, it goes back to Luke, and he ends up staying in the Hendrix School for Boys to help other third children learn how to take on their new identities and hide from the population police and grow into those identities and be able to stay hidden and create a life for themselves without getting caught. So that was that series that I got to read for January for my book of the month challenge with my mother-in-law. The last book that I read all the way through was by my favorite author. It is part of a series, and it's a 3-book series. I just read the first one, and it's called Second Chance. Now, it's a story about a girl named Chloe. She loses her boyfriend Jace, sorry, not Chase, Jace, in a bomb attack in London, and she, after many, many months, is ready to move on finally. And she notices as she's moving on, she's actually falling for her boyfriend's brother, Logan. And towards about 3/4 of the way through the book, she has to make an impossible decision and see if she wants to stay with Logan or not. And it follows their story, and then I can't go on in more detail because it'll spoil it. But that has a second and a third book as well. The second one still follows the story of Chloe, and then in the third one it follows her brother's story. So it switches points of view in the third book. Now, kind of moving on to February, just a few things that I have ideas about possibly reading in February is Reaper Beginnings by Alan Wolfsey. It is a little bit different than what I'm used to, but it's definitely been intriguing. It's been on my TBR for about a year now. I actually bought it in, I believe, May of 2024. And I just never got around to being able to read it. And then other than that, there's Tease Me Once by Willow Winters. Within His Reach by Katie Rush. Gravewater Lake by A.M. Strong and Sonia Sargent. And Mad About You by Mari McFarlane. I don't know if I'm saying that right. I really hope I am. Now, those are all just like rough estimates on what I'm going to read, as I said before, just because, as I said, there's already stuff on my shelf that I'm like, ooh, I kind of want to read that. And then there's other stuff that I'm seeing online that people that I follow are recommending. Actually, the Mad About You was one of my favorite YouTubers, one of her 5-star reads. So I was like, I'm gonna give that a shot. But there's just a few things that I don't know for sure if I'm gonna read or not. But I'll definitely give you like little reviews as we go on. And I'm gonna be highlighting specific topics in the book and maybe even give you like glimpses of the book as well as I get through them. Now I am a fast reader, so it's gonna be like little snippets that get placed here and there in different videos and podcasts. Moving on to another subject, I actually got this new like book tracker from my mother-in-law, and it's been really helpful with keeping track of course, keeping track of the books. And she actually got it online. I don't remember where exactly she got it from, but it's called a reading journal, and it literally says a book log for book lovers. And as you turn the page, it's got something different on most of the pages. So the very first set of pages is the books you've completed. It has a category for how many pages was in that book, the title of the books, and then the author and the rating. Let's see. And then if you turn a couple pages, you have your monthly book count. So as I said, in January, I did 8.5. So I colored in 8.5 of them. And then it has a section where you can write your favorite books, which I'll probably save until towards the end of the year to write them in, because those can always change. And then every page after that is like a little diary style thing. So it gives you on one page a place to write the title, author, genre, whether it was a physical book, ebook, or audiobook. And it says pages/length. So if it is an audiobook, you can put how many or how long it took you to listen to that. It has a start date and a finish date, and then it has the star rating. So how many out of 5 stars was it on readability, the plot, writing, then characters, and then your overall rating of it, whether you like the ending or not. And then under that, it asks you some questions. So it says, what is your first impression of the book? And then the next one is, what did you think of the book, and what will you take away from it? And the third is, what was the aim of the book, and would you recommend it? And then on the next page, it has thoughts and quotes. So any thoughts that you had or quotes that you liked in the book, you can put here. And then after that, at the very bottom, it says, would you recommend this book? And it has a little box for you to check yes or no. And then under it, it says to whom and why. And then I did forget to tell you guys, I actually started and finished a Stephen King book. I believe it was 3 days ago. It was called 1922. It was pretty interesting. I've never actually fully read any Stephen King books, just because I've always felt like he is a little bit slower. I like more fast-paced books. but it was one of his shorter books. According to this that I actually wrote down, it says it was 129 pages. It was really interesting. So basically what it was about was his wife inherited land that was about 100 acres, and it was passed down through her family for generations and was passed to her. And she wanted to sell it to this basically slaughter farm people, so they were going to non-stop smell and hear those gruesome things. I'm not going to use the same words as he did. And the husband wanted to combine his land that he inherited along with her land that they inherited, and just combine them and make a big farm so they could sell more fruits and vegetables and stuff like that. But she said she didn't want to do that. She just wanted to sell it and move to the city, where he never once had ever thought about seeing himself in the city or moving to the city. He despised the thought of it. So he ends up unaliving his wife to be able to inherit the land and build on it. Well, he starts seeing rats around his property and trying to take away from or get away from the rats because he feels like it's his wife's ghost haunting him. And then so it gets so bad that he's pouring cement into his well because he kept seeing rats there. And then one of his cows, he thought the udder was bit by a rat. He ended up selling his land and moving to the city anyway. And I'm not going to go too much further in depth with that one just because the ending kind of confused me, and I feel like it ended in a way of it's going to be whatever you feel happened is what happened. So your perspective of, did he go crazy? Was he imagining the rats? Was it actually his wife haunting him? That's how I feel like the ending was. So that's about as much as I'll tell you on that because I don't want to spoil too much for you guys. But it was a really good read, and I read it within a day. It was really fast. And I feel like because I was able to read that so fast, I'm willing to give Stephen King a little bit more of a chance. And I know I just have to get past the slow parts. My grandma's been trying to convince me for years to get past the slow parts because it ends up speeding up. She said there are always slow bits in his books, but they are really good books. He's her favorite author, whereas Natasha Preston's my favorite author, and it's fast-paced. As I said, in my January Book of the Month challenge with my mother-in-law, where we choose a book or a book series every month for each other, I chose a Natasha Preston book for her, and it was called The Lost. She said it was good. It was just really fast-paced. She prefers where it is slower and not as to the point, as fast. And she said she was also yelling at the people in the book not to do that. And she's like, who's dumb enough to do that? But she said it was really good. Well, for February, I chose another Natasha Preston book for her, which is actually my favorite one, and it's called You Will Be Mine. And it's about this college group of kids that end up being stalked, and they're slowly becoming unalived one by one. And I'm excited to see what she feels about that one because it's one of my, actually it is my favorite book of all time so far. And it's also still fast-paced. And I was definitely yelling at the kids in the book, too. So it's definitely one of those, she's going to be like, who's stupid enough to do that? Why are they doing that? Those type of situations. But it was a really good read, and I loved it. And I still love it. I've read it probably 6 or 7 times now. The Cabin by Natasha Preston, also I've read, I believe 4 times as of last year, and I almost picked it up again the other day. So I actually think I might add a Natasha Preston thriller or even one of her romances to my February reads. We'll just have to see, because I've been wanting to read more of her books. And I do have her newest book that released, I believe, the beginning of December or end of November, called The Party. And I've been wanting to read it too. And it reminds me of like a game of Clue or Whodunit, based off of the book reviews I've read and the back of the book on what it says it's about. So that's going to be super interesting to dive into. And as I said, all the books that I read in February, I will do little clip bits of it and let you guys know some of my favorite parts of it and do a little bit more of a dive on it than I did for my January books. Just because I know January, I did basically like a rough draft summary of it, whereas February I'll go more in depth with it. But as I said in the first podcast, if you guys didn't listen to it, you definitely should. It's on my YouTube channel, Bree Bears Books, where this podcast also is. It's the very first video. It's titled Chapter 1, and it's just introduction. If you guys would like any book recommendations from me or would like to send me any book recommendations, you can do that either in the comments here on YouTube. You can contact me via Instagram or Facebook, both at Bree Bears Books. And then you could also email me at breebearsbooks@gmail.com. So it's just BRIBEARSBOOKS@gmail.com. And then for everything else, I just check social media all the time. So I'm constantly on Facebook or Instagram. So I will see those. I have checked my YouTube several times. And as you could see in my first podcast, I even comment back. If you guys comment and have any questions, just want to talk, anything like that, I'll comment back. Or if you message me on Facebook or Instagram, or even if you email me, I'll message back. It might take me a day or two, but I'll always respond unless I'm busy. But if you have any book recommendations or even like some genres that you see me having like a consistency with, like I know I have a lot of thrillers and romance in there. If you want me to talk about other genres and recommend one for me, like if you want to hear about one of the histories, just recommend a book in that era. I'll read it and then I'll talk about it on my podcast. I actually did get invited to review a book, and I picked that book. It's actually already out. It released in December, I believe it released December 24th, and it's called Empowereds, and by Jeanette Rallison, I believe. It is a apocalyptic romance book, and I will be reviewing that. Well, not reviewing it. I'll be reading it and then writing a review, both on Amazon under Bree Bears Books, and I will also be talking about it some on my podcast, just because it so far in the first chapter I've read is already really good. So you'll hear more about that book as well as we go further on. But for now, that'll be all. We will talk more probably again next week around this time. So thank you again for joining me on Bree Bears Books. Don't forget, there's always time for one more chapter.